Hi, my name's Alyssa Johnson, and this is my oral presentation for my Worldview Interview for my ethics course. For this interview, I interviewed a 17-year-old Latino male who was born and raised in a small rural town in Arkansas. He was predominantly raised by his grandparents and his older sister, as his parents got divorced when he was very young. So, for this interview, I used the 6 core components of a worldview, which includes theology, self schema, ethics, soteriology, phenomenology, and epistemology. So, to start it off, I met with my interviewee and I just kind of explained to him the purpose of the interview. I explained a little bit about what a worldview is. I gave him some examples of the questions I'd be asking and just let him know that there wasn't any right or wrong answer, that it was just his opinion and that his identity would be kept confidential. So we started with theology, which he went ahead and told me right off the bat that he believed in God and that he was a Christian and that he'd gone to church the majority of his life. So you'll see in his answers that reflected. Beginning with the first question of why does the world exist? So he believes that God has put us here in order for us to figure it out and to kind of learn what our purpose is. He did mention that he thinks that God does have a purpose for for everyone, but that it's up to us to kind of figure out what that purpose is. With the next question, how did the world come to exist? He just basically said, that God created the world. What's your explanation for things in the world that cannot be seen? He replied to this one, the things that are unseen are something that are felt and are there even if you can't see them. What is the purpose for human existence and why are we alive? So he sees our purpose as that we're placed on earth here in order to kind of find out what we're supposed to do and who we're supposed to be. However, he did state that it doesn't matter if you've had an easy life or a hard life. God made that plan for you. It's just kind of up to you to figure out what you do with that plan, like how you take it. The next section that we discussed was self-schema, and I started off with the question, why are you alive? Which bounced right off of the question of why are we as a whole alive? So in this one, he said that he views his personal purpose is to have a positive impact on other people. He has a passion for football, is on his football team in high school, but he knows that he's not good enough to go to the next level, so he's decided that he wants to go to college in order to be a coach so that he can help other kids who may be kind of in the same position that he's in right now. So that's one of the reasons that he thinks that he's alive. The next question was, how do you view yourself or your self-image? He said that he views himself as a leader for his team and for his friends, and that he wants to direct them towards positive situations. He doesn't like to be around negative people, he said, but that he loves impacting people and bringing them up, as he stated in his own words. He views himself as kind of being on the same level as his friends, or even like the younger kids that he mentors in football, or maybe even a little below them, but he did mention that he never feels like he's above anyone. And when I asked him how he thinks others see him, he replied that he's a little popular and that he thinks that his teammates and his friends respect him. The next question was, what determines your worth, or what is your self-worth? And he said, how others view you determines your self-worth. So if everyone hates you but you think you're cool, then it doesn't really matter. He also mentioned that he thinks that even if other people don't like you or don't think highly of you, that it really all comes down to what the man upstairs, referring to God, how he views you. But overall, he said that he thinks it's important that you be a good person, that you be a positive person, so that other people will like you. The next question was, how would you describe your purpose? Which this went back to kind of the first question I asked in this section of why are you alive? He gave me a very similar response. He mentioned again about his desire to become a coach so that he can help others. He also mentioned that he strives to always be positive and that he really likes to make other people happy. The way that he put it is, we all go through stuff, and he wants to be there to be a positive light to those that have gone through things. The next question is, what does it mean to be human? Which this one took him a little bit of wrestling to kind of figure out an answer, but he came back with what we have been through is what makes us who we are. So he kind of referred back to the stuff that we've gone through kind of ultimately makes us who we are as humans and as people. The last question for this section was, do you have freedom of choice, or do you believe in free will? And he said that he does, and that no matter what situation you're in, you always have an alternative route to take. So the next section that we discussed with ethics, and I found the ethics section to be a very core section to his entire worldview. And almost every section that we went through, at some point, it kind of came back up. We talked about it a lot. It just kind of is the underlying belief to how he views kind of everything else. So the first question was, how do you define good and evil? He believes that right and wrong are based on how your actions affect other people. In his words, if it's good for others, then it's good, and if it's bad for others, then it's bad. So then my next question was, well, then who determines good and bad, as he put it? And his immediate response was majority vote. So he thinks that the majority kind of has the play in who decides what our ethics are. He views truth as being found within ourselves, that we define our own reality and that we define what is right and wrong, rather than following like a specific standard like we had talked about kind of with the theology. He also commented on how his family has played a very important role in teaching him what is right and wrong. And he discussed his Latino upbringing and just how much his family has influenced his beliefs and kind of his knowledge and his worldview as a whole. The next question is, what standards do you believe humans should live by? And again, he mentioned that he doesn't believe in a specific standard as long as you uphold the ethics. And yet again, his view of the ethics was good for others is good, bad for others is bad. He did discuss a little bit about like church and the Bible, as he is a Christian, but that he said that he kind of sees it as a reference, like to reference the Bible, but yet it's kind of up to us to ultimately decide the right or wrong for our personal lives. The next section was on soteriology. So the first question was, what causes people problems? He believes that people's choices and the decisions that they make are ultimately what causes people's problems. So in this section, we actually talked a little bit about his parents' divorce, and his dad had made the decision to have an affair on his mom, and then his mom made the decision of, I don't want to try and make this work, which then kind of became, you know, it as he called it, a domino effect down to him and his sister of, now it became their problem. So we discussed a little bit about how that someone's decision can not only make a problem for themselves, it can also make problems for those around them, which led into the next question of how can those problems then be fixed. So he views a solution to these problems is to make better decisions, and as he put it, to man up to the decisions that you've already made that may have been wrong. So he described that, like his dad should have manned up to his decision and asked for forgiveness and, tried to do things right. He did say that those around you also play a big part in influencing your decisions, but that ultimately it comes down to yourself and your own decisions and your own choices that either make or fix problems. So he was very adamant about in this section about it being your personal choice to either create a problem or to fix a problem, even if that problem's been handed to you by someone else. So then I asked him, how do you view the remedy to human imperfections? Which I actually asked this question and then kind of backed up and was like, and then asked him if he believed that there was a perfect human, which he said that he didn't think that there was, that we all had imperfections. So then what's the remedy to that? And he said that you make the choice to overcome. And again, he referred back to the situation with his parents of where he had been handed their problem, but then it became him and his sister's decision of what do we do with this, and to overcome or to crumble. So he views the remedy to human imperfections to be internal, where you make the choice to overcome the problems that may have been handed to you by others or by your own decisions. Overall, you have to be the one who makes the decision to do or be good. And the next question, or the next section, was phenomenology, which for this question, I just kind of wanted to get an overview of just kind of how he took in the world. So I asked him, how do you experience love, anger, pain, joy, etc., and just kind of let him go off of that. So he explained how a lot of that he just physically can see or can feel, like an inner feeling, but also that he could see. So he described how you can see if someone loves you by like the look in their eyes, or maybe by like the actions that they take. He also mentioned how he can see when his sister's mad at him by the facial expressions that she makes at him and like that type of thing. And then he also gave me a pretty in-depth example of the previous night's football game where one of the players wasn't really giving their all, and that how he could just see and feel that, and just kind of the emotional response he had from that information that he took in by what he could see and feel. So that is that section. And then the last section is epistemology. So how is knowledge obtained and credible? Which he went back to his family being the main source of his knowledge. So he stated, your family is where you get all of your main knowledge. How you think about the world and stuff comes from your family and those who are around you. So he explained how he knows knowledge is truth based on how it affects other people. So going back to his ethics, as long as it's good for others, then it's good, and if it's bad for others, then it's bad. And that's kind of how he views truth, like does it line up with those morals? And then yet again, he referred to how his family was a key component in setting those morals for him. And then at the end of it, I asked him, after all of these questions, how is it that you know what you know? And he responded with, the stuff that you go through by yourself when you're all alone and away from your family and friends and you're alone in your own head. So to kind of sum it up, he views the experiences that you have personally to be the determining factor in knowledge. He also stated that he knows what he knows based off of a gut feeling that he has. So he's like, sometimes you just know when something is right and something is wrong, and refer back to the football game the night before. And that pretty much sums up my interview. I would say overall, like one of the core things that I noticed, as I kind of previously stated, was his view of ethics and what's good and what's wrong. And a lot of his beliefs and worldview was stated or kind of branched off of that. Well, thank you for watching, and I appreciate it.